What's up, y'all? Welcome back to a brand new video, and today we're going to be covering my final predictions for the 2025 elections. I know I've been gone for a little bit. I had school. I'm sorry, but we're back, and we have some crazy elections that are coming up just tomorrow. These elections can be super important for the future of our country in being a kind of referendum on how Trump is doing, a gauge on his popularity and how Democrats are doing. And if Democrats do really well here, you can kind of be able to tell how things are leading towards the midterms. And since these races are statewide, a lot of them can be super important on how the state goes in the future. Like, for example, New Jersey on how it's trending, or a bunch of other states in just its legislative future. So let's just get into it. I'm going to be going from least important to most important, like how I did in the April elections. We're going to be starting off with the Pennsylvania Supreme Court elections, then going into the Georgia elections, then into Virginia House of Delegates, then working our way up all the way to Virginia governor, and then finally New Jersey governor. So let's just get started with Pennsylvania Supreme Court election. There are three races here. How Pennsylvania's Supreme Court elections work are their judges actually go on the ballot and are asked if they should be granted an extra term. It's not really like a ballot on two different candidates. It's more just if there's an incumbent Supreme Court justice, it's just like, should we retain them? And a lot of the time, incumbents just do very well here, and I think that'll be the same here. Looks like all three of the Democrats here are going to be retained very easily. I think all three of them are going to win by around 15 to 20 points. Some should vary a bit, but I think they will all stay within that range. I'll just say like 17, just to have like a baseline prediction, and let's move on to the next race. The next is out of Georgia. This is our first partisan statewide race of the election. It is the Georgia Public Service Commission special election, and there are two right now. There is District 3 and there is District 2. These are two statewide races in Georgia that are being held, or that were held by Republicans. I think they still are. Yeah, these are the incumbents. And these are races that have been held by Republicans for a while. It's 5-0 commission. But actually, what we've been seeing with the early vote here is that Democrats are actually turning out a lot in Atlanta. The black vote is 10% better than how it was in 2024. So don't get me wrong, these elections can be very volatile because of very low turnout. So anything could happen, but actually it's looking like the Democrats are very favored here to flip both races, which is very interesting because these are both Republican incumbents. But just because of how turnout is looking in the Atlanta metro area, with black voters turning out super well here, it looks like both of these races are going to flip. I've got both of them flipping by a very similar margin of around 7 points. And yeah, let's just move on to the next race. Next, we have a referendum in California. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this. This is to decide if the state will amend the Constitution to be able to have the state be able to change the map, so it'll be able to turn the state map in the House from looking like this to looking like this, with Democrats flipping around 5 seats in the House. So that's kind of what this is about. Originally, it looked like this was going to be a very close race. However, it turns out that Republicans just didn't really put any effort into this and kind of just gave up on it. So Democrats are looking to win this proposition by a very large margin. Right now, I have them winning it by around 22 points. We got a poll from, I believe, Emerson. Emerson, with them flipping it by, or not flipping it, them winning the race by 20. I think they're going to do a tad better there, winning it by 22, but it could be like anything around there, around 20 to 22. I've just got it at 22, but it looks like Democrats are going to win this very easily. And the amount that they win this by could tell us a lot about how they're going to do in what looks like the upcoming Virginia referendum, which is going to happen in around a year-ish, on if Virginia is going to be able to do the same thing as California, amend their constitution to be able to change their congressional districts in the middle of the decade. So depending on how much Democrats win this by, or depending on how much yes wins by, that could give us an indication as to how much it could win by in Virginia, or if it even could in the first place. So this is very important, and it obviously determines the House map in 2026. Next up, we have the New York City mayoral election. This one is extremely interesting. Like, it's been remarkable to see. Zoran Mamdani started off at like 1% in the polling back like a year ago. And over the last year up until like June, he managed to slowly build this social media kind of wave, which built up and built up and built up to where eventually he managed to beat Andrew Cuomo by a shocking margin of around 12 points for the Democratic nomination over the summer. And Andrew Cuomo has now decided to run as an independent alongside Curtis Sliwa. Curtis Sliwa, there you go, who is really interesting. He's an anti-Trump Republican. He's a member of the Red Beret, which I'm sure you could probably tell by his Red Beret, and he's a super interesting guy. He got shot 5 times in the back of a New York City cab on the orders of John Gotti and the Gambino family. Eric Adams was supposed to run here, but he did drop out, so it is a 3-man race. It looks like Zoran Mamdani is going to win. He's got the Democratic nomination, although I will say last time it looked like the polls were underestimating him. This time I think the polls are going to be fairly accurate, if not overestimate him just a bit. From what I've been hearing, it looks like the early vote is a lot older than it was over the summer, which is good for Andrew Cuomo, and it's just looking a lot worse for Zoran in terms of just expectations for him. Like, it's not looking like he's going to outperform expectations a lot. So I think he's going to get around 50% of the vote, maybe like 49%. So something like that. I think Andrew Cuomo comes second and Curtis Sliwa comes third. And I think Zoran wins overall by around 16 points. So that is my final prediction here. In terms of the boroughs, I think Zoran wins Manhattan, Queens, and Brooklyn. I think Cuomo maybe wins the Bronx. Maybe Zoran wins it. It's kind of close. I'm just going to say Cuomo wins it. And then I think that Curtis Sliwa wins Staten Island. I'm just going to throw that out there, although I'm not entirely sure. And yeah, so my final margin here is Zoran plus 16. A good indicator for Zoran's real electability is if he crosses that 50% threshold. So it'll be interesting to see if he does do that. I think it's around 50-50 on if he does. We'll just have to see. And moving on to the next race. It is the Virginia House of Delegates election. This is one where I'm not really gonna like go super in depth and like, you know, go seat by seat because that'll take way too much time. I'm just gonna say that Democrats flipped this in 2023. It is 51-48 right now. And I expect Democrats to seriously improve their margin here and net a couple seats, actually net a lot of seats. I think it is going to be 58-42. So overall, Democrats do net around 7 seats, although they could get up to 60-ish, or they could get as low as like 55, depending on how things go at the top of the ballot. But for now, I've got it at 58. Although if they do get to 60, that'll be a super good like indicator on how much Democrats could do in Virginia going forward with Abigail Spanberger as governor, presumably, just to like, because a supermajority would be insane for that. And yeah, that is my prediction for the House of Delegates. And now moving up the Virginia ballot, next we have the Attorney General election. This is one that has been extremely interesting to look at. It is definitely the closest race on the ballot in Virginia. It might be the closest race on the ballot in any statewide race next to New Jersey governor. This is very interesting. Jay Jones, first off, Jason Miyares, a fairly popular, fairly moderate incumbent attorney general who was polling down to Jay Jones for a while now. Jay Jones running pretty even with Abigail Spanberger and Ghazala Hashimi, I think is her first name. I don't know. A scandal came out about Jay Jones. He said some very horrible things about the Speaker of the House in Virginia and his family, saying, I'm not even going to repeat it. It's really bad. He tanked in polling. We can just like take a look at the polls here. Originally, he was polling very high, and then, you know, Jay Jones text messages leak, and boom, a switch is flipped. And now it looks like Jason Miyares does have the edge here. I'd say he wins by around like 1.8%, something like that, which is around the middle of where all the averages have it. Actually, No, like 1.4%. But you've got a bunch of different polls. Emerson has it as Jay Jones winning by 2, which is super interesting. Although I've heard some things about that Emerson poll. Maybe they're over like exaggerating how many black voters are going to turn out. We'll just have to see. I'm not trying to say that Jay Jones has no chance. I think it is pretty close, but I do think Jason Mayares does have the edge right now. And I do think he will win by a lean Republican margin of around like 1.4%, something like that. Pretty in line with the polls right now, although I do really think that Jay Jones could win. And now moving up the ballot, we have Lieutenant Governor. This is a position that was actually still is occupied by Winsome Sears. She's now running for governor, but now John Reed is the Republican nominee, and he was a radio host, and he's had some stuff come out about him. He's going against State Senator Ghazala Hashimi, and yeah, he had a couple scandals come out, but the weird thing is, Ghazala Hashimi hasn't really campaigned very well. She hasn't posted John Reed's scandals at all. She had like a debate with John Reed, and she used like AI or something. It was super weird. She's just not really running that good of a campaign. Like I said, not really, showing John Reed's scandal. And John Reed's running actually a pretty decent campaign, I'm not gonna lie. So I do think partisanship just overperforms. This is kind of how I think Jay Jones would have done if the scandal didn't come out about him. And I think she wins by around 7. She's not polling very well right now, although I think that's just because not a lot of people know about her because she isn't really running a campaign. But I think when voters come out who are undecided and they see the D next to her name, I still think they're going to break for her. And I think she's going to outperform a lot of polls. And I think she's going to win by 7.4 points. And now the main event in Virginia, the governor election. This one has been super interesting to watch because it's the Virginia governor election. Glenn Youngkin, 4 years ago, managed to win this race in a massive shocker to a lot of people, winning it by around, what was this, like 2 points? Absolutely ridiculous. Like, genuinely, this was such a shocker. And now, Winsome Sears is facing off against Abigail Spanberger. Winsome Sears being the lieutenant governor of the state, Abigail Spanberger being a former representative in the House of Representatives. And it's been a really interesting campaign. First off, Abigail Spanberger is a very, very, very great candidate for Democrats. She specializes in winning these suburban areas, turning them out, flipping them, areas that might have voted for Republicans previously, getting them to vote Democratic. She's been very good at that. It's how she won her House seat back in 2018. And she's been very good at that up until now. And she's just been a great recruit for Democrats. Winsome Sears, you can't really say the same thing about her. She was running like a terrible campaign until a couple weeks ago when she fired her campaign manager because she just wasn't running that good of a campaign. She was actually running a very bad one, I'm not gonna lie. And it looked like she was gonna lose by a very large margin of around like 12 points, something like that, something crazy. Since then, as she's kind of locked in, things have narrowed just a bit, but still not even really that much. Taking a look at the averages, it's just fried. Spanberger plus 9, Spanberger plus 11, Spanberger plus 9, Spanberger plus 9, 999. You've got like Republican pollsters having her up. It's just look, Jesus Christ. It's so bad for Winsome Sears. Oh my God. D plus 11 from Emerson, D plus 9 from Atlas, which are like the two best pollsters in the nation. It's so bad for Winsome Sears. I've got it at D plus 9.1 because I think Spanberger she runs pretty even with the polls. What you'll see in Virginia is the polls tend to be very accurate. So I think she's going to run pretty even with the polls and do pretty well. I think this is a good indicator for Democrats come 2026 because it would be a pretty solid performance. I'm not going to lie. But that's also partially just because Winsome Sears wasn't running a good campaign at all until like a few weeks ago. And even then, it wasn't very good. So that's where I have it, D plus 9.1. And now moving on to the final race of the night, the most interesting one, I'd say by far. And finally, the I'd say most important race of the 2025 elections, the one that could determine the most, the one that could gauge Trump's approval the most, the one that could gauge Democrat success the most, and the one that could affect a state the most in New Jersey and how it trends in the future, the New Jersey governor election. I'm not going to cover the state legislative legislator in New Jersey because I'm not really sure about it. I'm not gonna lie. I haven't done much research into it, but the governor election in New Jersey, this one is huge, and we're just gonna get into it. It is Representative Mickey Sherrill versus Jack Ciattarelli, who was the nominee in 2021. For context, he outperformed expectations a lot by around like 5 points. I'm not gonna lie. Got it within 4 points. It was 3.2, which is frankly a remarkable performance for Jack Ciattarelli. And now he is up again against Mickey Sherrill, who was deemed to be a pretty good candidate before the primaries, when she actually didn't really campaign that well, but she did end up bringing it home and outperforming expectations a lot in the primary and winning by a pretty solid margin, whereas Jack Ciattarelli won his primary pretty easily against Bill Spadilla, and they're now going head-to-head. Originally, Mickey Sherrill ran a pretty lazy campaign, and Jack Ciattarelli was closing the gap very fast, honestly. Originally, over the summer, it looked like Mickey Sherrill had around a 6 to 7 point lead, but Jack closed that gap all the way through July, August, all the way to mid-September, around September 21st, right here, when they had their first debate, and it looked to be pretty close. It looks like Jack kind of won that, but that is when it feels like Mickey Sherrill kind of stepped it into high gear, and she has kind of stopped the bleeding in the Democratic voter base, and the gap has stopped really closing, and he kind of has been held off to around a 3-point margin. That's where things have been since around September, where things haven't really gotten closer. In terms of early voting, things actually look very good for the Democrats. I'm not gonna lie. They're outperforming expectations a lot, and outperforming 2024 a lot, especially most recently, like yesterday, they did very well. They're doing very well all across the state, pretty much. But you shouldn't put too much stock into early voting. All that really matters. So basically, some Democrats are going to vote for Jack. Not really many Republicans are going to vote for Mickey Sherrill, though. So it really comes down to independents, and independents are probably going to lean pretty Republican here. The question is just how much to be able to make up that gap in just basic party registration, where there are just simply more Democrats in New Jersey than Republicans, since it's been a Democratic state for a super long time. And that is what Jack has to do. He has to make up that ground by winning some Democrats, but mostly just doing super well with independents. And it looks like in order to win, unless he does super well with Democrats, he'd need to win independents by around like 15 to 20, which it doesn't really look like he's on pace to do. Most polls have it pretty close, but they all do have Sherrill with the edge, except for one, which happened right as the bleeding started to stop. Atlas Intel has it at barely like leading towards Mickey Sherrill at around D plus 0.9. Originally, I had it at around D plus 3 since the bleeding stopped. But after Emerson dropped like a D plus 2 poll and Atlas dropped a D plus 1 poll, that seriously kind of changed my perspective. And you might take a look at the average and be like, hey, you know, things are looking pretty good for Sherrill. Look at the average of averages, and she's up by 4.8 points. But that's not really how you should look at things in New Jersey. In like Virginia, yeah, polls tend to be very accurate. But in New Jersey, systemically, polls just underestimate Republicans a lot. If you go back to 2021 and you look at the polls there, Phil Murphy was doing super well. Like, let me scroll up. Yeah, he was doing super well in the polls, in the averages. He was up by 7.8, and he only managed to win by 3. Now, I expect somewhat of a similar overperformance by Jack. The polls have kind of made up for it a bit, but I still expect them to underestimate him, which is why I have the race a lot closer than a lot of the polls have it. And I tend to lean more towards where Atlas Intel has it and Emerson College has it, of around D plus 1 to D plus 2. If I had to really gauge it and give an exact margin, I'd say around like D plus 1.8, although it seriously could go to Jack. I'm like, genuinely, there is a serious opportunity for an upset here, simply just because the polls could seriously underestimate Jack, and he could just pull it off with independents and with election day votes, and he could win. But we will just have to see. Although Mickey Sherrill could also win by a really large margin. If she wins by over like 4, maybe even 5, that is a seriously good indication for Democrats in the future. But we'll just have to see. I have it at around, like I said, around like D plus 1.8, although things could change with that. Thank you guys so much for watching though. Let me know what your guys' predictions are. My 2028 election night is coming soon. I know I've been working on it for a while. I'm trying to get everything perfect, but it is about to come out. Also, if you guys want to get my live reaction to all the results, check me out at Tester is Done's live stream on election night. I will be there alongside him, Luke Gagnon, and a bunch of other people, and we're going to be analyzing all of these results as they come in. So make sure to check that out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.